Morning of September 12, 1939. The sun rises weakly over the Bzura River, filtered through thick clouds of acrid smoke that hang like a somber veil over the sodden fields. The air vibrates with the distant roar of German aircraft engines, while the ground trembles like an accelerated heart, echoing the boom of heavy artillery that tears through the silence of dawn. Polish soldiers, exhausted yet determined, feel the cold sweat trickling down their backs under tattered and mud-soaked uniforms. The metallic scent of fresh gunpowder mixes with the odor of churned earth and decomposing bodies scattered across the muddy fields. It is the fourth day of the Battle of the Bzura, the largest Polish counteroffensive of the September campaign, where the Poznan and Pomorsy armies fight for survival against the relentless encirclement. Commanded by General Tadeusz Kutreba, these troops launched desperate attacks west of Warsaw, aiming to break through the German flank. Polish tanks grind along the muddy riverbanks, while infantry advances under unrelenting crossfire. The sound of machine guns slices through the air like invisible whips, drowning out cries of pain and urgent commands. Hundreds fall in the chaos, the wounded crawling toward the icy water in vain search for cover. The river turns red with spilled blood, reflecting the horror of the battle that has already claimed thousands. The Germans of the Eighth Army, under General Johannes Blaskowitz, counterattack with renewed ferocity after the initial surprise, redirecting panzer divisions and SS units to crush the advance. Stukas dive from the sky like starving predators, releasing bombs that explode into smoking craters. Hot fragments burn exposed skin, and the air fills with suffocating sulfur and choking dust. Losses are significant on both sides, but the Poles fight with the fury of those defending their homeland against the implacable invader, feeling the weight of German air superiority that makes every daytime movement a mortal risk. This first phase of the battle reaches its climax, with Polish attacks targeting the German flank toward Stryków, reaching advanced lines but halting against fierce resistance. Kutreba, learning that Łódź units have retreated to Modlin, orders a shift. Break toward Soshiczu in the Campinos forest, heading for besieged Warsaw. The encirclement tightens, the air heavy with tension, smoke, and the echo of distant explosions. Civilians in nearby villages, like Czestochówka, feel the paralyzing dread, the ground shaking under their feet as they flee from burning homes. In Czestochówka, German troops massacre dozens of civilians, the smell of burning wood and blood mingling with the terror, in yet another act of brutality marking the campaign. Thousands have already perished in what is the largest confrontation of the invasion so far, foreshadowing the fate of 170 Polish soldiers who will be captured in the coming days. The human cost grows, echoing the despair of the besieged nation, with families torn apart and villages turned into fields of death. Further south, in Upper Silesia, Hitler's armored train is stationed at Ilmenau. The air inside the cars is heavy, laden with secret tension and cigarette smoke clouding the confined space. Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, head of the Abwehr, arrives shaken, his pale face reflecting the horrors witnessed on the front lines. Days earlier, his subordinates reported orgies of massacres, Polish civilians forced to dig mass graves before being lined up and mowed down by SS machine guns. The dry crack of shots mixes with the groans of the dying, while the stench of death permeates the Polish air, turning stomachs. Canaris, with a tense voice, confronts General Wilhelm Keitel, chief of the Armed Forces High Command, in the stuffy car. "I've been informed of planned mass executions," he says, echoing in the cramped space. "Targeting the Polish nobility, bishops, and Catholic priests. Keitel, impassive, replies that it's a direct order from the Führer. Civilian chiefs will be appointed to oversee what he calls racial extermination. A calculated coldness that chills Canaris to the bone and reveals the systematic program of atrocities. He meets Hitler moments later but remains silent, too shaken to speak. He returns to Berlin with his loyalty shaken by the brutality unfolding in occupied Poland, sharing his anguish with opponents like Karl Gordeler. SS divisions like the Brandenburg and Leibstandarte carry out cleansing measures, arresting and shooting suspected elements, Jews and Poles, many killed while trying to escape, according to cynical reports. In Bedzin and other villages, the terror persists. Synagogues burned days earlier still smolder, the smell of charred flesh hanging like a malevolent ghost, sowing deep fear among survivors. In Warsaw, the besieged capital, the sky darkens with Luftwaffe squadrons. Bombs fall on dense residential neighborhoods, exploding into fireballs that illuminate terrified faces. The deafening roar is followed by the crackle of collapsing buildings, while civilians huddle in damp, dark basements, coughing dust. They feel the powder falling from the ceiling like dirty snow, hearts pounding with every siren wailing in the chill air. The devastation grows hour by hour, streets turned into smoking rubble, the air filled with suffocating dust and cries of the wounded begging for help. Warsaw bleeds under the relentless aerial assault, with the population feeling the siege tighten like an invisible claw. On the Eastern Front, in areas like Krzyżaniec, the Luftwaffe launches terror bombings. Planes dive, releasing bombs that kill dozens of civilians. Craters open in the muddy ground, bodies scattered on destroyed streets, the smell of fresh gunpowder mixing with collective panic and the sobs of survivors. Across the English Channel, in Abbeville, France, the first Anglo-French Supreme War Council convenes. British and French leaders, including Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain and Édouard Daladier, feel the weight of the declaration of war. They decide to postpone any ground offensive against Germany, also suspending aerial bombings for fear of devastating retaliations on their cities. The air in the room is tense, with cigarette smoke clouding cautious discussions on strategies, while Poland bleeds alone, abandoned by the Allies. This hesitation reflects the global uncertainty of the phony war, with distant nations watching the horror unfold, the scent of betrayal hanging in the diplomatic air. As the day ends, the setting sun tints the horizon red over the Bzura. Bodies float in the river swollen by recent rains. Polish soldiers feel the fatigue in their aching bones, civilians the deep terror in their tormented souls. Poland resists heroically, but the human cost is immense and growing. Tomorrow brings more uncertainty, more blood spilled in a war that devours everything in its merciless path. For not missing the next day, subscribe, like, and comment.